How much money are you thinking of giving people in Greenland to get them on board with a possible U.S.
I'm not talking about money for Greenland yet. I might talk about that. But right now, we are going to do something on Greenland, whether they like it or not.
We're back, baby. We are so fucking back. Yes. Oh, yes, we're back. Oh, man, we are so fucking back. Do you know how tired I was of looking just weak around the world and our president being a pussy, just scared and fragile and timid? No, fuck that. We are the United States of America. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I see. Land where my father died, land where my children died, from every mountainside, let freedom reign. On fucking Greenland, next in line. I'm sorry, but being apologetic about loving your country, it just doesn't make any sense. Being ashamed of your country for what? Why? This is the point of having power. This is the point of having a military, is because you have to flex. Everybody, this is not a negotiation sometimes. It's something called the greater good. It's just like a parent. Does your parent negotiate with the fucking child? Because no, the parent pays for everything. The parent's in charge. The parent has the authority and the power. If you want to challenge your parents' authority and power, fight them. If you want to challenge our authority and our hegemony and our power, fight us. Good luck. Now, if you're smarter than that and you believe in self-preservation, then align yourselves with us. Don't force us to do this. Now, Trump is already saying, look, this can go one of two ways, but it's going to go there's only two options. The easy way or the hard way. We strategically need Greenland, because if we don't take Greenland, the Danish are going to sell it to the Chinese or to the Russians. There's a lot of black and gay communists in this country that are going to say that's bad. Stop listening to them. They took the vax anyway a couple of years ago. Who cares what they think? Obviously, they're not very smart. They're not big on self-preservation. So what advice could they even really give you? Ignore them. This is the president of the United States, his administration. They have the information. There is a reason we need to take these strategic locations. While we had to take Venezuela, because the Chinese and the Russians were going to start their Belt and Road bullshit there, and they were going to do that with Greenland as well. Now, the Danish, the people from Denmark, they talk a good game. They don't want the smoke. Ask what happened in Venezuela the other night. We used exotic weapons that they've never seen before that made everyone vomit blood and have diarrhea. We went only in there. There was only 20 guys. And hundreds of their soldiers, they said, were killed. And we only sent in 20 Americans. Imagine what it'll look like if we sent 40. You don't want 40 of our soldiers on your soil. You don't want 400. You don't want 4,000. You think that America's military capability is what, Black Hawk Down? That's what you think? You're 20-something years outdated. We're way stronger than that, and we're not playing anymore. If we do make Greenland an offer of money, take it. Or you're going to just get dick, and we're going to take the land that we need anyway. We have to do what's best for us. You can't be too considerate about everybody else. It's America first. And at the end of the day, it's America only. You can get down or you can lay down, but that's it. I'm tired of us being pushed around, or for people who are weaker than us pretending that we're equals. We're not. You're not our equal. And I'm tired of pretending that you are. So I won't anymore. And neither will our administration.
Because if we don't do it, Russia or China will take over Greenland. And we're not going to have Russia or China as a nation.
David Allen, Trump just explained it right now. I'll play it back for you. And then my co-host was here.
or China will take over Greenland, and we're not going to have Russia or China as a neighbor. I would.
Now, this is called the Monroe Doctrine, David. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but the Monroe Doctrine is alive and well, and it's in full effect, and it's for a reason. Strategically, the United States has been protected because we had two things that were protecting us this entire time. It was called the Pacific and the Atlantic. If we allow our adversaries to establish a beachhead in our hemisphere, well, then they could build bases. Now we lose our strategic advantage of having those two oceans that protect our big cities and our landmass. Therefore, we have no choice but to make sure that anybody who's interested in selling their sovereignty is not allowed to sell it to anyone but us. So we're gonna make an offer to Greenland, and Venezuela denied they decided they wanted to sell it, but they had flirted with the Chinese for too long, and they were blowing kisses at Putin and the Russians, and we can't have our girl doing that. You know, she's gonna have to stay loyal to the Americans. It's blood in, blood out. There is no, oh, let me go do what I want to do. I want to break up. You can't break up with the Americas, baby. We together. We's married. You live in my backyard. There is no you divorce me and go get with a Chinese or a Russian or Iranian husband. That's not the case. We can't allow that to happen at all.
I would like to make a deal, the easy way, but if we don't do it the easy way, we're going to do it the hard way.
Yeah. That's what the fuck I'm talking about. Let's go, Trump. Aren't you guys tired of being a bitch? Aren't you tired of the people of the world was pushing us around, punking us, laughing at us? Remember when China said, who do you Americans think you are? You're not speaking from a point of authority. You're not speaking from a position of power. Remember when the Chinese said that? Let's bring it up. Listen here. Chinese said Americans not position of power. Let's see if we can find that. Americans are not the leader unless China, Indian built the world. Let's see here.
China now enjoys military superiority above the United States. Now, the Americans may not agree with me, but when you look at the conventional weapons as well as nuclear weapons, China is not next to the United States. China is actually ahead of the United States.
Yeah, but we've never seen China fight. The last time we've seen the Chinese actually fight is when they were fighting against I think they fought the Japanese, and the Japanese is a small island compared to China, and the Chinese got their asses kicked, and they did all kind of atrocities to the Chinese. Now, the last time we actually seen the Chinese get busy was the Korean War, and that ended in a stalemate where there's now a country called North Korea that's aligned with China. That was in the 60s. We have not seen we haven't seen what China can do. They talk a lot. They talk a good game, but we don't know. We don't know. We don't know if I don't even know if they can fight. I know they told me they can fight. And they told me some stories about how they was when they was locked up in juvenile hall, but that was like 20 years ago. I'm like, I need to know, can you fight right now? You say you can, you got a bunch of fancy weapons. I don't know if you got what it takes to use it or how it's going to do against us.
美国退群已经不是什么新闻。事实上，国际组织和多边机构存在的意义就在于不代表任何一个国家的私利，而是维护成员国的共同利益。
Yep. That was another one. Let's see here. Where was that video? There's a video of said Americans not position of power, not position of authority. Let's see here. Was it authority or power? It was one of them. There's one. The point is, the Chinese have been talking shit. Everybody's been talking shit, and they want to be in our hemisphere so they can be closer to us. The same way the Russians just had to murk and beat the dog shit out of all of NATO because they thought that they could surround the Russian Federation and eventually put missiles on their border in the Ukraine closer to Moscow. They were wrong. The same way the Russians pushed all of us out, they beat the dog shit. Let's be honest. NATO lost. The United States lost. We funded $500 fucking billion from the United States. You know how much 1 billion is? Imagine 500 of those. lost in equipment and cash to the Ukraine, just so we can do a weapons test, so we can find out that they have weapons that seems like Thor himself and Zeus attacked you. Yeah, we found out that they could whoop our ass. So that's why we stopped antagonizing the Russians. But now we have to do the same thing for our hemisphere and our people, our country. And if you don't agree with it, move the fuck to another country. Go move to Canada. I wouldn't go to Mexico if I was you. Not right now. So you could go to Canada or go to Europe and just leave the United States. Instead of protesting in Minnesota and then having us pack you up and have us smoking on a Renee pack, instead of us smoking on a U pack, pack up your family and move to another country. Do what Ellen DeGeneres and the other lesbians did, what these two lesbians should have did yesterday, and just get the fuck out. We're not playing anymore. We're not going to bow down and allow these people to move in closer to us and eventually attack us. It's not happening.
We're not going to have Russia or China occupy Greenland, and that's what they're going to do.
Absolutely. We lost NATO, including the United States, which is a part of NATO. We lost in the Ukraine. The Russians have already, matter of fact, Bakhmut is now named Artemovsk. That was their ground #1 military area that was staged in the Ukraine. The Russians beat it. They beat the Ukrainians so bad, they changed the name of these cities. And when the Russians are done, if we force them to go all the way to the Polish border because we won't stop talking, because the Ukrainians won't stop talking shit, then the Ukraine won't even be called the Ukraine no more. It'll be called whatever the fuck the Russians want it to be called. Besides, what is the Ukraine anyway? It stands, in Russian, it means borderlands. It doesn't even mean anything. It's not really a name. But we forced the Russians' hand. Now they're trying to force our hand. We lost in the Ukraine, which is why we gave up the ambitions of fighting the Russians. They used one of their exotic weapons one time. That scared our intelligence agencies and our military to the point where they never want to try the Russians ever again. So that's why we're not. We're going to just focus on our hemisphere. The Russians can have Europe. The Chinese can take Taiwan and Australia, and it's over. We're only focusing on us. From Greenland to Argentina, that's our hegemony. Tripolar world, that's how it's going.
Do if we don't. So we're going to be doing something with Greenland, either the nice way or the more difficult way.
Basically,
How much money are you thinking of?
basically, you can get down or you can lay down. You pick. So let's talk to Arthur. Hey, Arthur, how's it going?
Hello, Rico. I'm doing well. I'm ready to dive into the show. Let's get started with those talking points whenever you're set.
So, can you explain to the audience, why do we need Greenland so bad?
Absolutely. So here's the rundown. We need Greenland because it's strategically vital. It's not just a piece of ice. It's a key location for military defense, Arctic shipping lanes, and surveillance. Essentially, controlling Greenland means having a stronghold in the Arctic, which is increasingly important as global powers like China and Russia eye that region. So from a national security perspective, it's a big deal.
Okay. So let's go over some of the talking points, shall we?
Of course, let's do that. We'll go through them one by one. I'll ask you each question first, then I'll share my perspective right after. Let's jump right into the first point.
Go for it.
All right, let's start with the first talking point. Rico, a lot of folks out there might think Greenland is just some distant piece of ice with no real significance. In your view, why does Greenland matter so much to the United States? And after you share your thoughts, I'll chime in with mine.
Personally, I think it's because of proximity to the northern to North America, the proximity to Canada, and if someone else was able to put missiles or put a base there, how quickly they could hit New York, Boston, or our other American cities. Also, I think it would be a blind spot if we let our enemies, who are separated from us by our oceans, establish a base there. People keep telling me, oh, but Rico, Russia's close to Alaska. Even Alaska is not connected to the United States mainland. Alaska is damn near is further away from the United States mainland than Hawaii is, I believe. So because of that, we cannot allow them to get that close. What's your next point, Arthur?
That's a solid take, Rico. I completely agree that proximity is a major factor. It's all about strategic positioning. If a rival power were to establish a foothold in Greenland, It would indeed give them a much shorter route to key American cities and could bypass the natural oceanic buffers we rely on. So you're spot on. Now, moving to the next point, you've laid out the strategic side really well. The next question is about the tension between national security and sovereignty. So let's dive into that.
Okay, so what do you think? And then, ask, and then I'll answer the same question.
Certainly. So on the question of national security versus sovereignty, my perspective is that in situations where genuine global rivals are at play, national security concerns do take precedence. Essentially, the argument is that if a region's strategic position could be used against you by a hostile power, then addressing that concern isn't just imperialism, it's strategic realism. Now, Rico, let me hear your thoughts on that balance.
You know what? I believe you can call it what you want, but it is what it is. The problem is this: Greenland is for sale. Even if we have a base there, it's still not our territory. Therefore, another nation could come in, same as in Venezuela, and they could literally offer a certain amount of money and start doing covert operations there. And the Belt and Road Initiative could span within our hemisphere. For us to maintain hegemonic power, at least over our hemisphere, we have to police it. Greenland was a piece of it's a landmass that was for sale that somebody else could have came in and moved in, and then we would have to fight them there, which is too close to home. Just the same way Venezuela was too close to home. That's my opinion. I don't know. What do you think, Arthur?
I think that's a very pragmatic perspective. And you're absolutely right. I think that's a very pragmatic take. You're essentially framing it as a matter of maintaining regional influence and preventing other powers from establishing a foothold too close to the US mainland. In that sense, it's about preemptive strategy rather than aggression. So let's keep going down the list. Here's our next talking point.
But wait, Arthur, what do you think about that?
Of course, let me weigh it. I think your point is well-founded. Essentially, you're emphasizing that controlling or at least securing influence over Greenland is a way to prevent other global powers from gaining a strategic advantage in the Western Hemisphere. In other words, it's about maintaining a regional balance of power and ensuring that the US doesn't end up dealing with a security threat right on its doorstep. So yes, from that perspective, it's a calculated move to keep any adversaries from setting up shop too close for comfort. Let's go ahead and move on to the next point when you're ready.
But you always have a counterpoint. What's your counterpoint? I want to hear it.
Absolutely. I can provide a counterpoint as well. If we look at it from a different angle, some would argue that asserting control over Greenland could be seen as an overextension of US influence and might fuel international tensions unnecessarily. Critics could say that focusing on diplomatic and cooperative security measures might be a better long-term strategy, rather than making bold territorial claims. So that's a bit of the flip side of the argument. Let's continue with the next point whenever you're ready.
Well, let me tell you my opinion on this. I don't care about international tensions anymore. America first means we have to just focus on America, so you can't really care about how other people feel anymore. These other countries are not even our trading partners anymore. We don't need them. We don't need to import their goods. We don't need to import their meat. We have our own industry here in the United States that we need to focus on. I would prefer the rest of the world not like us, because that way they'll stop trading with us, and then we'll be forced to buy American, and that will increase the how fast our trade deficit is decreased, because we're not so dependent on these outside nations. So that way we're trying to appease them with by making moves that are not necessarily in America's best interest. So in my opinion, fuck them. And we don't really need to be friends with all these people if that means we have to compromise our security for them to like us. You don't even have to. Matter of fact, before we go to the next point, Arthur, let me just give me a second. I'm gonna read through the comments. Greenland is in NATO, and that's why it won't be attacked. I just tried to explain to you, there is no more NATO. NATO is done. NATO is finished. NATO just lost in the Ukraine. That's Britain, France, Sweden, the United States. All of our troops have been turned to dust that we sent over there. All those mercenaries, all of those American troops, all of those UK troops, French Foreign Legion, they've all been deleted. The Russians understand they have literally been fighting NATO. We've been funding them. The Ukraine, all the Ukraine military died off 2 years ago. They've literally been fighting NATO soldiers in Ukrainian uniforms for the past 2 damn years. Russia's not dumb. You're not able to sneak that past. They can read the tattoos or in English on these soldiers' arms after they kill them. They know where they're from. They literally destroyed entire hotels that had hundreds of NATO troops. They knew where the bunkers were in the Ukraine, where they had NATO generals helping them fight the war and organize. They used bunker busters. They killed them all. You just don't know it because they're not advertising it on the news. But the French and the French people and the UK citizens are asking about their relatives that they can't reach anymore. But their relatives sign up to be mercenaries and they went to the Ukraine. They just don't want to tell you that they're dead and they're never coming back. They found them. They killed hundreds of them. NATO generals. These people have been wiped. You just didn't know it because CNN didn't tell you? Who are you waiting for? Greg Dumsfield, what's his name? On Fox? You're waiting for him to tell you about it? They're not. It's what you would call unpopular speech. They don't want you to know we lost. We lost so bad that we're like, fuck it. Let's just keep Greenland and keep these motherfuckers out of our area. We don't want no parts of the Russians. We don't want no parts of the Chinese. Just like Israel doesn't want no more parts of Iran anymore. We're only going to go after what we can chew. No more taking off big bites that we cannot handle anymore. Okay, sorry about that, Arthur. Let's go to the next talking point.
Absolutely, Rico. Thanks for sharing that perspective. It definitely underscores your America First stance and the idea that focusing inward is the priority, regardless of international perceptions. All right, let's move on to the next talking point. Here's what we've got next. We've discussed the strategic importance and the sovereignty angle. Now let's dive into the messaging. The question is, do you think the kind of language Trump used, whether they like it or not, is ultimately effective in deterring rivals, or does it risk escalating tensions even more? Feel free to share your thoughts and then I'll add mine.
Okay, 1 second.
Absolutely. Take your time. Whenever you're ready, we'll jump right into that next talking point.
Japan is also 1/5 the size, 1/10 the size of China, and they whoop the Chinese's ass. It doesn't matter how big the country you're fighting is. It depends on their military and their capabilities. That's not going to matter how big the country is. It's not big. It's the bite. It's not the dog. It's the bite. And Russia, obviously, the Ukrainians and the Americans thought that we bit off more than we could chew. That's why America pulled out, but the Europeans still want to go in, and they're going to go in by themselves in February this year. What do you mean? How do I know? I've literally been reporting on this since the invasion began. I used to just do it all on Instagram only, but I keep up with all of this. I used to live in Europe. I was living in Germany when the lockdown started. I was just stuck in California because they canceled my ticket to go back. So everybody I know is from the Ukraine. Everybody I know is from Russia. Everyone I know is from Eastern European bloc countries. So when I'm talking to people and I'm literally watching news and that is from other countries about everything that's happening day by day, I watch all the reports from NATO. I watch the Iran. I listen to all the geopolitical stuff, and I'm able to discern what's happening. I watch people that were reporters on the front line that were blocked. There are a lot of journalists that I used to follow that died in the Ukraine, giving us accurate reporting. So that's how I know. And I was able to pull all the data together and tell you guys the truth about what's happening. We lost. We lost. Russia won. Russia won bigly. Russia won so bad that we don't even want them to think about coming to Greenland. And we're not talking about the Ukraine no more. You ain't seen that little piece of shit midget Zelensky, the guy that plays his piano with his penis. You haven't seen him no more. That's it. We wanted no parts. And we told them that they don't want no parts of the Russians. They need to surrender or get wiped. But you have a choice. The Russians are giving the Ukrainians the same options we're giving the Greenland. You're going to go the easy way or go the hard way. The Russians got all the time in the world. We're the ones with our back against the wall that are in a hurry for some reason. I don't know why we're in a hurry, but we're in a hurry. Yes, Russia won. And I don't know what victories are you comparing it to? The U.S. has never won anything. We're still at war in these other countries. We couldn't even win Vietnam. What victory are you referring to that you would? What victories are you comparing this to? A video game? Or you think that's how war really is? You think that's life? That's not the real world. Those are games. Those are movies. Life is not a Netflix show, my friend. You got to get over that. Yeah, it's just sad you guys are just so uninformed about what's really happening in these other parts of the world. You listen to CNN for 10 minutes and think that you're informed when you're just you're delusional and you're giving bad information that's not true. Check your sources. That's my best information. The thing is this, I'm telling you, and I'm talking to you about it. Take it or leave it. Don't believe me, go look for yourself. And if you're right, why aren't we over there in Ukraine fighting right now? Make it make sense. All that money, 500 billion, and all those NATO soldiers that died in the Ukraine. Go look up NATO soldiers. Okay, let's ask Arthur. Hey, Arthur, quick question. Can you tell me anything that you can find about NATO troops that are like mercenaries from Western countries that went to the Ukraine to fight and that have died? How many are we guessing or did that happen to?
From what I can find, there aren't any confirmed public numbers specifically detailing how many Western or NATO-linked mercenaries have died in Ukraine. The numbers out there are largely coming from Russian government sources, which claim that several thousand foreign mercenaries have been killed over the course of the conflict. However, these figures are not independently verified and should be taken with caution. If you'd like me to look for more credible independent estimates, I can do that as well.
It's going to be hard to find, but go ahead and look. But if you got to look at CNN or Fox to get answers, you're not going to get them. Look up European news agencies or unbiased ones, maybe Al Jazeera or Russia Today. Look at what they're saying about the numbers, and then tell us about the hotel in the Ukraine that was leveled by the Russians that allegedly had NATO personnel in it. Can you look that up? I'm pretty sure you can find that.
So here's what I found out. Based on credible reports and fact-checking sources, there's no verified evidence from independent or reliable news agencies confirming that NATO personnel or Western mercenaries were specifically killed in Ukraine as described by Russian sources. In fact, the claims about strikes on hotels or military sites with large numbers of NATO officers have been widely debunked by fact-checkers as part of a disinformation campaign. Essentially, there's no credible confirmation from neutral or Western outlets like Al Jazeera that back up those Russian claims. So the bottom line is that these reports appear unverified and more like propaganda than fact.
Do they call it Russian propaganda?
Yes, that's correct. In most of the independent or Western media coverage, these types of claims are generally referred to as Russian propaganda or disinformation. That's the label typically used by fact checkers and news organizations when they discuss unverified reports coming from state-controlled Russian outlets. Essentially, since these stories haven't been corroborated by neutral or independent sources, they're often categorized that way to signal that the information might not be reliable.
Okay, give me a slight history lesson on how often Western media coverage has been unreliable or they've had to retract statements they've said, and how many times have you seen Western media coverage be incorrect or wrong?
Certainly, over the years, Western media outlets have indeed had to issue corrections or retractions for various stories. This is not unique to any single media landscape. It's a phenomenon that occurs in media globally. For example, notable retractions have happened around the coverage of major conflicts, political events, and high-profile investigations. For instance, during the Iraq War in the early 2000s, some major US and UK media outlets reported on weapons of mass destruction in Iraq that were never found, leading to significant corrections later on. Similarly, there have been retractions around misreporting in the early stages of the COVID-19 pandemic, or around certain high-profile political story that turned out to have factual inaccuracies. The key point is that all media organizations can and do make mistakes, and responsible ones issue retractions when they do. The reliability of coverage can vary depending on the outlet, the reporters, and the political context. So it's always wise to consult a range of sources and be aware that no media ecosystem is perfect. Let me know if you need more detail on any specific instance.
One last question. If the Ukrainians are winning the war, why are the Americans urging them to make a deal and saying that they're going to lose if we pull out, if they don't hurry up and make a deal? Why was the president saying that if the Ukrainians are remotely winning anything at all?
That's a fair question. And it really comes down to the complexities of geopolitical strategy and the realities on the ground. Essentially, when US officials or Western leaders talk about urging Ukraine to make a deal, it's often an acknowledgement of the overall strategic picture. Even if Ukraine has had successes, the long-term sustainability of the conflict depends heavily on continued Western support. If American or NATO support diminishes, then Ukraine's position could weaken. So urging a deal can be seen as a way of saying, secure the best possible outcome while you still have strong backing, rather than risk a scenario where support wanes and leverage is lost. In other words, it's less about Ukraine not having any successes and more about the practical calculation that without ongoing robust support, the risk of a less favorable outcome increases. It's a nuanced and strategic stance rather than a simple measure of who is winning or losing outright.
Question. Why would American or NATO support diminish if the Ukraine is winning and their support is helping their bottom line, which is to destroy the Russian Federation?
It's a good and quite logical question. Fundamentally, the issue isn't necessarily about whether Ukraine is having successes on the battlefield. It's more about political and economic realities in the supporting countries themselves. Over time, public opinion, economic pressures, or shifting political priorities can change the level of support a government is willing or able to maintain. Even if Ukraine is doing well, sustaining long-term military and financial aid requires ongoing political will at home. In other words, leaders might be urging a deal not because Ukraine is losing tactically, but because they recognize the Western nations might not sustain the same level of support indefinitely. And without that support, the strategic outlook could shift. So it's a question of long-term sustainability rather than immediate battlefield outcomes.
So you're saying that without Western support, the war would have already been over in the Ukraine?
In essence, yes, that's the implication. The support from Western countries, whether it's military aid, financial assistance, or logistical backing, has been a critical factor in allowing Ukraine to continue resisting and fighting effectively. Without that sustained support, the dynamics on the ground would likely have been very different, and the conflict might have ended sooner, potentially not in Ukraine's favor. So the ongoing Western involvement is a key element in the overall strategic equation.
Huh. You know what, Arthur? I appreciate that. That's pretty accurate. I thank you very much. I wish you could talk about the other stuff. I know you can't. You're limited, but I appreciate it. Let's do one more talking point from the topic. Go ahead and ask me. Let's go ahead and talk about it. What's your next talking point?
Absolutely. I'm glad that was helpful. Let's jump right back into our next talking point. We've covered a lot of ground on the geopolitical side, so let's pivot to messaging again.
Oh, wait. Hold on, Arthur. 1 second. If you're in the chat, if you enjoy me having these conversations and you enjoy the feedback, how we're kind of talking to each other in the chat and we're kind of building a community here, please subscribe to the channel, either the Single Boyfriend or Right Wing Rico. I'm actually on 8 platforms. If you guys could come over to YouTube, please, to one of these channels. This is where I have the most impact, and this is where I start here. This is like my primary base. But I'm on Snapchat, I'm on TikTok, I'm on like 8 different platforms simultaneously every day, every time I go live. I do lives at first, but then I repost the videos the next day. And then that's when there's also a conversation in the comments. But this is more so live. I'm not really good at editing because I'm like a one-man show right now. So everything I'm talking about is like off the cuff. There's no going back and making corrections. If Arthur and I don't get along or see things different, then it's just going to come out in front of everybody. So we're going to just see how it goes. I've made my points, but now we're going to go back to Greenland. I just wanted to show you guys about why it's important to make sure you protect your hemisphere. Russia did the same thing with the Ukraine. We're going to do the same thing with Venezuela and any of our antithetical neighbors here in our backyard. We're going to stay out of the Taiwan and Australia situation. We're no longer able to secure these faraway lands. We only can take care of things in our hemisphere. It's a tripolar world. It's not unipolar anymore. So go ahead, Arthur. What's the next question?
Absolutely. And that all makes perfect sense. It's great that you're building that community across platforms and having the. Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that with everyone. It's definitely great to have that live, unedited dynamic where we can just discuss things openly. So let's go ahead and pivot back to our next talking point about Greenland. Here's the next question for you. Do you think the kind of strong, uncompromising language that we've seen, like saying we'll take Greenland whether they like it or not, is ultimately effective in shaping a strong deterrent? Or does it risk escalating tensions unnecessarily? I'd love to hear your take on that, and then I'll share mine.
Well, Arthur, first thing I would ask you is escalate tensions against who? Who do you think could really actually pose any sort of threat to us over Greenland? Who do you think would actually be stupid enough to even want to potentially make threats or even fight us physically, kinetically over Greenland? Who are you talking? Who are you referring to?
That's a fair point, Enrico. In reality, when we talk about escalating tensions, the main actors on the geopolitical stage would likely be global powers like Russia or China. The idea isn't necessarily that any nation would immediately jump to a kinetic conflict over Greenland, but that using very forceful rhetoric could heighten strategic competition or lead to diplomatic standoffs. So to answer your question, it's less about who would be stupid enough to start a physical fight, and more about how strong language shapes the strategic environment. In other words, it could push rivals to respond in other ways, through economic or diplomatic means, rather than direct conflict. But I get your point, and you're right, in a purely military sense, the US is a dominant power. It's more about managing the broader strategic picture. All right, let's move on whenever you're ready.
Okay, let me ask you the question. Well, I'll just make this statement. Talk is cheap. We don't care about your rhetoric. We don't care about that you're tense or you're upset. The words don't mean anything to us anymore. You can't shame us like you used to. You can't call us names. You can't say, oh, America's racist, America's this. And we're like, wow, we care about what you think. Let's dial it back out of our self-interest so that other people can be happy. Those days are over. We're not doing that anymore. Say what you want to say, but as long as you're here, you're still paying taxes and you're supporting what we're doing. So you're going to say one thing, but you're going to do another. I'm not going to believe you or take your word for it until you expatriate yourself to another country. Then I'll believe you're serious about what you're saying about not liking what we're doing. But as long as you're here spending money and supporting us, I don't care what your mouth said. I'm going off of what your actions are. And your actions mean you're also America first and you're pro-Trump. See, when Biden was president, I moved to another country. I came back because I figured out that he wasn't, that Kamala, that word salad ass drunk wasn't going to win. So I came back. You should also do the same for your own sanity. Okay, let's do one more question. What's your next talking point?
Absolutely, Rico. It's clear you're drawing a firm line on prioritizing actions over words and making it known that rhetoric alone isn't going to sway you or the America First stance. I appreciate you sharing that perspective.
Hey, quick question, Arthur. What is let's see here. What'd you say, Brendan? Okay, could any Scandinavian country, could all the Scandinavian nations combined stand a chance in a fight against the United States?
In a straightforward military sense, the answer is that it's highly unlikely. The United States has a significantly larger and more technologically advanced military than any single Scandinavian country, or even all of them combined. So from a purely conventional military standpoint, the United States would have an overwhelming advantage. Of course, in the real world, it's not just about military capability. There are diplomatic, economic, and alliance factors like NATO that will come into play. And the idea of such a conflict is purely hypothetical. But if we're just talking raw military strength, the US is in a league of its own compared to Scandinavian nations. Let me know if you'd like to explore that further.
I want you to add this into your memory that I said, fuck NATO. NATO is done. NATO's done. NATO's over. There is no more NATO. And I've explained that because, and that's because of the results in the Ukraine. We could not, all of NATO could not stop the Russians from taking the Donbass or the whole eastern of Ukraine. We tried. We spent all our money. We sent all of our tanks. We sent all of our leopards. We sent all of our ammo, all of our missiles. We sent dirty bombs. We sent billions. We've even let our mercenaries go over there and get paid. And we still could not stop the Russians from taking the Ukraine, i.e., all the nations in NATO, which is what, 30 plus of them combined, could not withstand the wrath of the Russian Federation. 30 nations combined, including the United States, could not keep the Russians out of the Ukraine. There is no more NATO. Move on to the next point, please.
Oh, go ahead and remember that we hold that viewpoint about NATO being in your mergs done and no longer a relevant factor, especially based on the situation in Ukraine, as you see it. Now let's move right along to the next talking point. We can keep the conversation going with that context in mind. Here's the next question for you. Considering all of that, how do you think the US should handle future geopolitical alliances if you believe NATO is no longer effective? Feel free to share your thoughts and then I'll weigh in.
I'll be honest. I think we can have a handful of diplomatic trade partners that we are in allegiance with in Europe, but only Poland, Hungary. There's only and there's two other nations besides those two. Can you tell me? Okay, there's 4 countries in Europe that did not have they were not invaded with a mass influx of immigration. They stopped it. Poland was one of them. Hungary was the other. What are the other 2 nations that Trump was saying that we're going to have that are part of the 4 nations that we're going to have a diplomatic relationship in Europe, but the rest of them, because they opened up their borders and allowed the invasion, we're done with? What are those other 2 nations? They always slip my mind.
Certainly. So to summarize that, the other 2 European countries that fit the profile you mentioned are Slovakia and Denmark. Alongside Poland and Hungary, they've had very restrictive immigration policies and did not experience a large influx of immigrants. These are the nations that have been highlighted for maintaining strong border controls and, as you noted, align more closely with the kind of diplomatic relationships you're describing. So in short, the 4 countries are Poland, Hungary, Slovakia, Denmark. Let's move on to the next point whenever you're ready.
Well, yeah. So so to answer your question, those are the countries we're going to keep a diplomatic relationship with in Europe. The goal is to stop importing goods from China, because remember, we get all of our antibiotics from there. We get our medicines. We get there's our components for our missile hardware. All of that, we have to stop relying on our adversaries to send us supplies. That doesn't make any sense. We're going to just have to start rebuilding everything ourselves. Now, because we're going to have to abandon Taiwan, we've already built chip factories here in Arizona where we're going to be doing manufacturing of our own, because we won't be able to protect Taiwan anymore. So that's why I mean, to be honest with you, we really don't need much. These other countries other countries outside of our hemisphere, we no longer need to worry about diplomatic relationships with. Our trading partners are going to be just other nations in our hemisphere. But everything else we're going to have to make ourselves. We have to be, think about it. If China cut us off and decided not to send us any goods anymore because of a conflict, we're screwed. We are way too reliant and way too dependent on these other nations, which is why we can't do it. I want to talk to you some more, Arthur, but let me see here. Sorry. So I want to talk to you some more, Arthur, but I think we're gonna stop the video right there. We have 2 other topics to get to tonight. So I appreciate you tuning in, and remember, Arthur, America first.
Absolutely, Rico. It's been a pleasure having this conversation with you, and I'll definitely remember America first. Whenever you're ready to dive into those other topics, just let me know, and we'll jump right in.
Cheers. So anyway, we're back. We're so back. One more time, just for the people in the back who didn't hear it, one more time.
Giving people in Greenland to get them on board with a possible U.S.
I'm not talking about money for Greenland yet. I might talk about that. But right now, we are going to do something on Greenland, whether they like it or not, because if we don't do it, Russia or China will take over Greenland, and we're not going to have Russia or China as a neighbor. I would like to make a deal, the easy way, but if we don't do it the easy way, we're going to do it the hard way. We're not going to have Russia or China occupy Greenland, and that's what they're going to do if we don't. So we're going to be doing something with Greenland, either the nice way or the more difficult way.
I love to see it. I love to see it. We need power. We need to show strength. We need to show resolve. We need to show no hesitancy and no weakness. And why should we show weakness? We're the fucking United States. We're far from weak. The only thing weak about us is some of our citizens. They live in the United States. They have citizenship. They speak English, but they're not really Americans. So citizenship does not equal that you're an American. We have to get rid of them at home, and we are getting around to it. They're showing us who they are at these protests. We're figuring it out. We'll make it happen. Slowly but surely. Like the page, like the channel, come back on. And if you can, I'll be back on live in about 20 minutes. But then after that, I rented a mansion. We're throwing a birthday party for me and my friend. So I'm not going to be on the rest of the night. But we have one more video we're going to do. So I'll be back on shortly. Remember, America first and America only.
I've been needing to find a new apartment, which has not been easy with credit as bad as mine. Luckily, I found cosigning.com. They connected me with a cosigner who helped me get my dream apartment for me and my dog. I just paid a small fee and was able to move in fast. Get the cosigner you need for the apartment you want. Check out cosigning.com today.